Listen up, you bunch of crazies. This is Matt Norrin Radd Creamer, and you're listening to XVGM. Get in here, you bunch of rascals.
Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Mike.
And I'm Justin.
And this is episode 123, Prison City, with Matt Creamer, Norrin Radd. I am so excited to bring Norrin Radd, a.k.a. Matt Creamer, a.k.a. Radd Daddy, back on the show. That's, I guess, a good nickname.
I mean, I think it's cool.
Yeah. Matt has been on our show multiple times, and we love having him on. He's a friend of the show. He's a friend of ours. So, Matt, thanks so much for joining us on XVGM Radio to talk about your wonderful soundtrack, Prison City.
Hey, my pleasure to be here. You guys are the only two guys that I know that know more about video game music than me, so I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn.
Oh, man.
Amen to that.
I don't think I've received a compliment that high in many, many years.
I'm hurt, Justin. I give you compliments like that all the time.
Oh, I don't listen to you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. That's fair. I wouldn't listen to me either. So we're talking about a game called Prison City. This is a pretty awesome retro throwback, and it's published by Retroware. It's developed by Programsir, if I could pronounce that. I've been following Programsir forever online because he's been working on this Simon Quest game that's coming out. It's like a nod to Simon's Quest, but the character's name is Simon Quest.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I was
so
like, you missed the S when you said
yeah,
that.
no. It's very much a homage to Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. I'm looking forward to checking that out. However, he also developed this game, Prison City. I was so excited to hear that Matt was going to be doing the soundtrack for this. And I gotta say, Matt, I'm a little disappointed. You said that you were not working on any more 8-bit soundtracks. You know, it's like, they keep pulling me back in.
Is this an 8-bit soundtrack?
Yeah, for the most part.
I thought it was 16. Okay.
No, I'd consider it an 8-bit soundtrack. It's got
There's a reason why there's confusion here, boys. I meant it when I said I'm not going to make any more NES soundtracks, like just raw dogging it. I feel like I've probably made over like 300 NES tracks, and it's like I've almost said all that I want to say with that sound and that style, but what happened with this soundtrack was I knew I didn't want to just write the exact same thing that I've been doing. So there was, I don't know if you guys want me to get into it, but there was like a whole development process for this soundtrack that was something I'd never done before. And it was just like sort of it was my way of making things way more difficult for myself, but it was something I had to do to make sure that I didn't end up writing something that sounded like what I had been doing before. So by that token, Justin, yeah, there's a little bit more going on in the soundtrack than is just a raw 8-bit soundtrack. But Mike, it is also starting from the kernel of 8-bit, and I sort of built it out like sort of an onion.
That's what I figured. That's what I was thinking. Like, it definitely sounded more advanced because there's just so many layers, which, I mean, that's just your style.
Right.
But I noticed that there was a lot going on in the background that it could have maybe been like additional bits, and I didn't know if like you were taking some inspiration from like a VRC6 sound chip style, you know, like the NES sound chips, like the additional sound chips that were in the Famicom, you know, that like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Sunsoft was using like whatever the 1-bit DPCM samples, and Namco had their own chip that they would do.
Yep.
That I'm very unknowledgeable on the chips.
We covered all of them, almost all of them. We haven't done Konami yet.
Oh yeah,
right, and then the Konami one, and I don't really like the way those chips sound. Like, that's not the Nintendo stuff that got me nostalgic feeling. Like, I like the raw Nintendo chip. But what the big bridge here was, I don't want to write music just in a tracker anymore, because writing music in a tracker it's at least an order of magnitude more complicated, and it's an order of magnitude more annoying, because if you make a mistake, or here's a good example. If you want to write a pattern, so, or even just like 4 bars of music, something that's supposed to loop.
Yeah.
Then the next pattern that comes after it, if you want the notes from the previous pattern to sort of echo into that pattern, you have to hand write them in every time. And so the hand writing in all of the echo stuff, you know, I'm a full grown man now. I don't have like teenager time to just become completely anal about this has to be the most detailed thing ever, like the texture and all that. Like, you know, I could let a delay effect unit cover me if I want to echo notes in. But, you know, then you got to worry, are you going to get that nostalgic sound if you dink around with all these modern plugins? So I was torn. Like, I want to basically take my workflow and put it into Cubase, which is where I would make any other music, synth music, recording. It's like, but it's not a tracker, and trackers are phenomenal at getting that fine, granular chiptune detail. In fact, they were the only way to do it at the speed you could. Like, as annoying as it is to make chiptunes in a tracker, it would be so much more annoying to make authentic chiptunes in Cubase. So I needed to find, like, how do I bridge that? I want to make the music in Cubase. I want to produce it in Cubase so it sounds good. Because a lot of people, like the dude bros that like, oh man, I grew up playing Contra and Jackal, and then now they're playing Call of Duty and stuff. They don't remember how bad, like, quote, air quote, how bad the Nintendo sounded. But if they were to just get blasted in the face with a Nintendo track right now after 30 years of not listening to any, they'd probably like, yeah, it's it sounds like a cell phone ringtone. You know, it's not quite like what I remember. You gotta lure them in. You gotta coax them in. So it's like, all right, the way to do that, the way I'm gonna do that with this soundtrack, this was my first time ever doing it. I'm gonna write pure NES stuff first. That'll be the kernel. So I actually had to write the NES music. That was step one. That would have been Venture Kid or Slaying. I already finished the track. It's done. But instead, I said, all right, now take every channel from what I wrote in the tracker and export it out as a MIDI file and drag all of those MIDI files into Cubase, which is where you can change the notes. Then I recorded every track from the original Nintendo, the tracker, recorded every track as an audio file and dragged that in too. So I've got the audio file, so it sounds exactly like it did in the tracker, but I have all this MIDI information that I can start sending to new things now. And I actually sent that MIDI information to, there's a sample library called, dang, why am I blanking on it? Anyways, it's a sample library made by Impact Soundworks, and it Super Audio Cart, that's the name of it. And they have sampled all of the old chips, like the Konami one and the Namco one. So I had all these Nintendo sounds. So I started sampling. I was layering together the sort of the expansion chip sounds with the Nintendo sounds, and I also added just a pinch of like sub bass for the triangle and extra drums, like real drums behind the drums. But I wasn't just layering. This is what made it sound so different, and I don't even know if it sounded good. This was just like an experiment. I'm like, throw everything at it and we'll see what sticks. What I started doing was I was side chain compressing the Nintendo with real instruments, so like real synths, or even these samples of Super Audio Cart, like the Nintendo expansion chips. So what I'm doing is whenever the Nintendo sound hits, it will duck the audio of the whatever real instrument I'm also sending it to. So basically, you're hearing the Nintendo sound really loudly and full, but in the background, there will be like an extra plink or ploink or full body sound from another synth. And I was just like, what if I sort of like mask real instruments behind all the Nintendo stuff? So it's still in the forefront, it's in your face, but then behind it is all this extra stuff. I don't know if it worked. It was never been done before, but that's the new way of me making chiptunes.
So
that's really nifty, and I think that explains why I was thinking that it sounded more 16-bit, because there was more to that to the sound that was going on there that was kind of hidden behind the 8-bit stuff. Huh.
Let's talk about Grim Conversation, which is the intro track that we just played. Yeah. I am getting major vibes from Fester's Quest. Specifically the underground theme when you're going through the sewer and you hear that do-do-do-do.
Yeah.
Do-do-do, and then that synth comes in. Any inspiration from that, or am I just kind of, rolling the dice there?
Well, you know what? Like I said, you guys are the only ones that would bust me on. Like I don't even know. I don't know Fester's Quest soundtrack good enough to tell you if that was where the inspiration came from.
Okay.
But that I think started out as a sewer level track, and it was not slow enough or something. It was one of the few tracks. The slow tracks are the ones I always get busted on. They're like, it's not quite slow enough. Like, dang, I need to go slower. So that one was just a little too high octane. But I was kind of pushing like, well, we've already made this track. Can we use it somewhere else in the game? And they thought, man, that it would sound good for the cutscenes. But I'll tell you, as for inspiration, I know with the sewer track, I kept trying to use Alien 3 as my inspiration. Like I want the kick drum sound from I can't remember the name of the composer for Alien 3, but it's
for Genesis,
like the Fallen Bros. No, the Alien 3 for NES.
Yaron Tell.
Yaron
Tell did the soundtrack for, I believe, for that version.
Okay. And the big thing with that is the kick drum is on the triangle wave. So the triangle is supposed to be your bass almost always. It's supposed to be your melodic bass content, but the Fallen Bros and a lot of like the European and Western composers would always do this thing where they're like, well, why don't we, I don't like the way the kick drum sounds, the way Capcom's been doing it. I want it to have some oomph to it.
Yeah.
So they would make it in the triangle wave. So you're playing your triangle, you're playing your bass line, and then in the middle of the bass line itself will be the kick drum sound, which is just
yeah.
Huh.
And so that's what I was doing. I was trying to like do that sound while I'm playing the bass line all at once. If you listen to all of Capcom's Nintendo stuff, there's not a kick drum sound on the whole, like none of it has a kick drum sound. It's all on the noise channel.
Right.
So there's really no meat in the kick drum. Unless you're talking about the toms from like Mega Man, but not a whole song of doing that.
Yeah. Unless you're talking about like something with an expansion chip, then it doesn't. But that doesn't count because now you're cheating. Now you're using extra chips. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You be careful you say that too. Yeah, these expansion chip guys, they're diehard. They'll
I love me some expansion chips. Don't get me wrong. We've done multiple episodes on them, so we love them.
They do fantastic things.
Yeah. So they're great, but also at the same time, like if you want that core NES sound, you got to go with like the straight up non-expansive chip. But anyways, let's get into our next track. We've got tons more to talk about with Matt. We'll get some more juicy nuggets out of that. What do we got coming up first? Let's see. I believe my first pick is Preserve Infiltrator by Matt Creamer. All right, welcome back. That was Preserve Infiltrator off of Prison City. I love the names, by the way, for these tracks.
The track names are really well done.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are kind of indicative of like almost like what you expect to hear. Obviously, there's a lot of like whatever level you're in there, but I thought the naming was kind of clever on these.
Yeah. Did you name them, or did they tell you what to name the tracks?
No, actually, that makes me feel happy. Yeah, I named these tracks, but it's funny when you're in a project, I have an aversion to naming any tracks because I got burned really early on where I named a track something, and then I wanted to change ideas in the song, but I'm like, it's too late. You already named it this, and it's like it kind of boxed me in. So usually when I'm working on a project, I don't name the tracks anything. It's like track 1 dash, then my revision save dash 02 at 03 04.
Yeah.
So I usually name them right at the end. So it's like, what's the level called? Okay, this is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. So I'll name the level. Preserve is the name of the level, and then Infiltrator is the kind of the name of the track. Because I don't just like going like forest stage or ice stage. Like, come on, we need a name for these tracks. But it's really off the cuff, so it's funny that it was not awful.
No, this is good stuff. It's very Fear Factory. You know what I mean? Like Preserve Infiltrator.
Yeah.
I'm getting like a hunter killer kind of vibe.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like it when the tracks, for one, actually have names. There's so many soundtracks that we find that are just like BGM 01 through 512.
You can't be calling it Bloody Tears.
I mean,
instead
Bloody
of
Tears 1, Bloody Tears 2.
right, or BGM 01, as you mentioned. Yeah.
But it also really makes me happy when the name of the song, outside of anything else, like I listen to the song and then I look at the name and I'm like, yeah, you know what? This is Preserve Infiltrator. That is an appropriate name. Like, I get the vibes from the song. And we'll talk a bit about that on my next pick, just because like I partly picked it because of the name. Also, it's a great track, but like I really dig the name. But this track, I'll leave it to Mike to pick the Mega Man track.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that Matt always ends up writing some really high energy stuff that I just love. That sounds like a amalgamation of like Mega Man, Castlevania, and insert Taito / Natsume action game here, and that's my bread and butter for NES music. So yeah. I really enjoyed hearing some sustained notes in there, some like note bends and sustains, like more towards right before the loop. Was that like an intentional thing, or were you just kind of like, I'll just kind of throw something in just to kind of like make it sound a little different? It stands out from the rest of the track, which is all just like really fast, high energy, like very staccato, you know?
Yeah, that's usually what I do. Is my default mode is always staccato. The notes are always coming. It's like they're falling over themselves. The notes can't come out fast enough. So I noticed one time, or usually when I'm writing music, especially with chiptunes, if I just hang on a note for just a little bit, sometimes it'll spawn a bunch of new ideas that I wouldn't have heard, like in the chaos of the snowball getting away from me. Sometimes if you just sustain the note, you're like, there's a moment of clarity. Okay, there's a couple things. And when you're really in the zone, it's kind of like writers. When a writer's really in the zone, it's like you can see moves ahead.
Yeah.
And so if you get to a point where you're like that with a song, sometimes the song will almost write itself. You're just like, get the notes, get the ideas down as fast as possible, so that they're just there. Don't polish it, just get the notes down, and you can fix it later.
Yeah.
And this was definitely Preserve Infiltrator was the Capcom track on this soundtrack, and I try to avoid Capcom tracks because they're so much harder to write than Konami tracks. Because Konami, you can almost always picture a band, 2 guitar players, bass player, and drummer, and they're all getting out of their mind. But with Capcom tracks, they're like, we don't do that. This is like a lounge jazz band, and you have to like think about multiple melodies combining into one grotesque thing in the middle. And if you mute one of them or solo it by itself, it doesn't even sound like a song. And you're listening to it like, where's the downbeat? I don't even know. And then you mute the other one. You're like, oh, okay. If you combine the two together, they start like coalescing in this weird synergy of notes. And Capcom music is ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. And the problem is, I don't like one over the other. Sometimes I want to just hear some raw meat, some beef. And Konami's great at like raw meat.
Yeah.
But the thing is, sometimes I'll write a pattern, and the pattern will have a little Capcom flavor in it. And that's the scariest thing for me, because I don't know how to get out of that puzzle.
Right.
Like, as a musician, like self-taught musician, so much of my songwriting is puzzle solving and transitions and moving from one idea. So like I get a sense of ideas in my head, but I don't always know what that idea is until I hear it. And so I'm always seeking that sound. And sometimes you stumble into other sounds and you have to go in that direction for a bit and then go in this one. So Capcom is the scariest thing for me because I'll write a good pattern and I must hear it and see it through because I know it's going to be a banger. It just means it's going to be 10 times more work for me. And so this was the scariest track, but here's the crazy thing. This one wrote itself. This was like almost a single sitting. Like this was one of the easiest songs on the soundtrack to write. It's like,
wow.
It's almost like the grand unified theory in like particle physics and cosmology. It's like if you stumble onto this perfect secret, it's like perfect that you stumbled onto the secret of the universe. And it's like it just spilled itself out naturally without me having to agonize over like the dead ends and the puzzles that were being solved in me. It was like I had frame advantage. I was cheating in video games. I had Game Genie codes on for this one.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like just hearing how like easy that was to do, because I know it's not always easy to write a track. Like I'm sure you can attest to that, and there's probably plenty of tracks on this soundtrack that were either a pain or just a struggle to write. But to know that something that sounds so good was actually just a natural kind of overflow of an idea from you is great to hear.
I will say, I do notice now that I'm like really tuning in, because when you're playing the game itself, because I did download the game and I was playing it, and when you're playing the game, you're more focused on the action and trying to beat a level while vibing out to the music, that you can't really get into the nitty-gritty nuanced details of the tune because you're so focused on the action. But listening to it now, separate from the game, and hearing what you mentioned earlier about like layering NES style sound font almost onto like a normal like instrument songs through Cubase,
yeah.
I definitely hear some subtle differences in your old stuff versus this stuff. The tone, but I can tell it's not as flat sounding. I'll say there's a little bit more like it's
brightness?
more. Yeah, there's a little bit more brightness, a little bit more vibrancy.
Yeah,
there.
this track in particular. I mean, we've only heard 2 tracks so far, but one of the notes that I had written down was just like this is much brighter than the Grim Conversation track, which rightfully so. Grim Conversation, you know, should be dark and grungy, more than just like it's a little bit brighter. Like I also said earlier, I'll leave it to Mike to pick the Mega Man track. Like it was bright like a Capcom
for sure
track, which Capcom in general has its own kind of brightness to its music.
I guess because I've heard so much of Matt's music in the past, I'm comparing it a lot to the game that I probably played the most, which was Venture Kid. So like listening to it and I'm hearing that versus this, and I'm noticing the subtle differences, the drums in particular too. You can tell that the drums are more advanced sounding when you really pay attention to them. There's a lot more going on there than just your standard like NES kind of sound. When it comes to like music and creating like this new style that you're using to make it easier on yourself, it seems like it's more work in a way. Maybe you can kind of clarify, but like it sounds like you're writing the NES stuff, then you're taking that NES stuff, which you would have had anyways, and then you're bringing it into Cubase, and then you're kind of tweaking it and tooling around with it and putting the NES stuff up front so people hear that primarily, but like you've got all this other stuff buried underneath. So isn't that kind of doing double work, wouldn't you say?
Oh, you nailed it. And yes, it's doing double the work, and the second half of that work is untested. So I had no guarantee. I had to basically just trust my ears and say like I don't think this sounds awful, so it must by default sound passable. And so I was like, if I write the Nintendo track good, then my job is done. And now I'm basically just trying to make it sound different when it touches your ears. So one of the big things you guys are probably hearing, it sounds brighter. I'm not sure exactly what you guys mean by that. If it's like tone, like the mood of the song is brighter or the actual sounds themselves. But
I would say the sounds themselves.
Okay, yeah, definitely. There's with the Nintendo expansion chips, I think the Namco ones were actually using FM synth. If I'm not mistaken, they sound like FM. So I'm basically at times layering these FM sounds underneath it. But the big difference too is that it's stereo, and that's the hardest thing with Nintendo music. If you want to write authentic Nintendo music, by default, it's going to be mono. And then if you start dinking around with the expansion chips, I don't know what they were doing. I don't know if they could have stereo or not. But with this project, I wanted to make sure I was going to incorporate stereo because I don't want no Call of Duty dude bro listening to mono and going like, "Why does it sound awful?"
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah, you got to put it in
sound
stereo.
big. But here's the big mistake that a lot of people make when Nintendo is like 2 square waves, left and right. No, don't do that. That's the worst thing you could do because all that phase cancellation, the detuning, it works because it's mono. And so if you split them up, that doesn't sound the same in your ears anymore. And people notice it, like they can hear it from across the room. They'll be like, "Doesn't sound right."
Oh yeah,
it's not right. And so
you
100%.
Really
got to be careful not to. You can't break the sacred bond of Nintendo nostalgia, but if you want to add to it, you got to be really careful. So it was more work for me to keep that bond there, but to try and take it to another level that I had personally never been to, because I'm basically just not interested in releasing to the public the same sound I've been doing for the last 20 years.
Sure.
Like, we needed something new, and I wanted something that was worth talking about. So that was where I just took a chance on this whole concept.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did confirm that the Namco 163 chip does not have FM synth. It is wavetable based.
Okay, yeah, similar sounding, but not FM.
Yeah. I will say though, you kind of hit the nail on the head. You want to try to do something different, and it definitely stands out. It's definitely different. It's not bad. It sounds great. It's just you can tell that there is a difference in the font, like that you're using there, like the sound. It's got like the actual sound itself sounds warmer, sounds brighter. It doesn't sound as muted on the NES. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
I've been doing so much stuff with shaders lately on like emulation, like the shaders that simulate CRT monitors and stuff.
Yeah.
And like if you look at the Sega Genesis or the Saturn, anytime you see a checkerboard pattern of white or black, that's usually what they would do for shadows or for light. And they can't do transparencies in the way that like the Super Nintendo could, where it's just make it half transparent so that you can see through it.
Right.
So instead, like what they would have to do on the Genesis was they would have these pixels really close to each other, but every other one would be what the background is supposed to look like. And if you put that on the CRT monitor, it simulates transparency, but it's not actually. And so by that logic, the old games were so full of trickery because visually they were using trickery to make us see transparency when it wasn't transparent. And the same thing's going on with audio where they're like, well, it's mono, but we have to find out how to make it not sound like the worst thing you've ever heard. Like, that must so much work that went into these games.
That must be an absolute headache for people, like the developers that are taking those old school games, like, you know, all these collections that are coming out, making those collections onto modern systems. That must be such a headache. Ugh. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, most of the work's done with the shaders, but yeah, there's a whole nother story there.
Let's get into your first pick, Justin. What do you got?
Oh, yeah. So we're going to listen to Cold Storage, Ice for Veins.
All right. Let's give it a listen.
All right, welcome back. That was Cold Storage, Ice for Veins from our Prison City Spotlight with Matt Creamer, Norrin Radd, and oh man, so I did say that I picked this one partly because of the name. When I was looking through the list of tracks, I saw Cold Storage, and immediately my mind went to Wipeout, because the soundtracks of those games are done by a guy who goes by Cold Storage.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I didn't expect this to sound anything like that. It was just one of those like, oh, that's really funny, so let me listen to this one. And then as soon as I click play, I was like, oh, heck yeah, this is really, really cool. I mean, right away you're kind of grabbed by the high-pitched synths that are almost universally indicative of like an ice level and whatnot. And then you get these like really overdriven guitars that kind of remind me of Contra a little bit. I can't remember the Contra track. I want to say it's when you're facing down the hallway.
Yeah.
Like that.
The second level.
Yeah.
In the first Contra.
The rest of it, just like the melody was really catchy. I mean, my classic line, there was a lot of buzzy bass in there. But it was just not what I was expecting, only because the fact that I saw Cold Storage and went like, this isn't going to sound anything like Wipeout, and it didn't, and it was fantastic for it.
I really love this track, but the specific parts that I really love, like the main riff throughout the whole thing is really solid, but it kind of gives me a little bit of a James Bond vibe, like a little bit.
James Bond vibe?
Yeah, like the yeah. And then when it picks up, it's like you're given a teaser for the rock out part. You know, in that little bit in between, and then it kind of goes away, and then it comes back, and just man, that rock out, the those snares, that's so punchy, and it really kind of threw me back to your Anomaly album, which is just like, it's not a game, it's just an album that you did called Anomaly, which is kind of like I guess you could say like death metal NES style. Wouldn't you say that?
You nailed it. This was definitely the darkest track I wrote on the album or the soundtrack. But the developer Programmancer was able to show me the levels first. So this one definitely took inspiration from a few games. Obviously, you can see some Power Blade in there. There's some Shatterhand in there. There's also some Batman in there. Like a lot of the dark backgrounds really reminded me of the Batman's pixel art.
Yep.
And Batman had a really distinct approach to their power chord, which I basically just used the teachings of that. You know, if you think about the boss track from the Batman NES game, that's exactly the power chords I'm using with this one, which is more of a bitey power chord. So they're using a lot of the 12% duty cycle, which is not usually what you would hear for the power chord. Like Konami would always they would do like a duty cycle from the 12 right to the 25, but they wouldn't stay on the 12 the whole time because it's too bitey. It's very like sharp. And so, but it sounds like even the start of that boss track for Batman is like, it's like right in there. So it's very guitar driven. This one, like you said, Justin, the indicative sounds of the ice level. Like I want that high pitch.
Yep.
It sounds like little snowflakes coming down, or like, it's sharp, like, stalactites, or, like something sharp. It's very sharp. So that was the goal with that one anyways.
To me anyway, I can't speak for everybody, but to me, that kind of synth sound always hits just right. Like it can be screwed up if it's not properly sharp.
Sure.
If it's not in the right key, or if it's not high enough, it doesn't quite hit the mark. But like if I'm going to listen to a track that is an ice level track, I'm expecting to hear certain things, and if I don't, I will not call that track a success.
Right.
So as soon as I hear them, like right off the bat, and this, I'm like, yes, like you laid it out perfectly to start. You set the scene, and then you take us into from this like high bright ice snow type stuff into this dark grungy, like, oh, is this like an ice cave? Are we underground? We're gonna die. This is terrible. We're gonna die. Very, very intense.
Yeah. Justin needs his twinkle. He needs the twinkle. If he doesn't have the winter twinkle, it's not a nice.
Specifically, the tracks I was thinking of was the Iceland theme song from Dodgeball, Super Dodgeball,
yes,
and the ice track from Goonies 2, like the ice caves.
Okay,
yeah.
And I don't think I directly referenced them. It's just in my mind. I'm like, sound like those. And so that was my unofficial inspiration for this one.
Interesting. So you mentioned earlier Power Blade and Batman and Shatterhand, and all of those are an inspiration to this game. So we may as well start talking about the actual game itself, even though I'm loving talking about the music, which we talk a lot about the games normally and very little about the music, which is weird because we're XVGM Radio. We're supposed to talk about the music, which we do, but not to this level of extent. And I think that's just a testament to Matt being a chiptune fan, and being a VGM fan. So this game is a side-scrolling action game, very much in the vein of Power Blade, almost like a spiritual successor to Power Blade. Your main character is using a boomerang, just like in Power Blade.
Well, they call it a chakram.
The chakram, but it's essentially like a boomerang.
Yeah,
because it comes back to you.
I was gonna say, I haven't played the game yet, but I've watched the Steam videos and whatnot, and I got the same kind of sense. I was like, oh, that kind of reminds me of Power Blade.
Yeah, it's very much. I mean, just the whole entire aspect of the game itself and the motif, but also the play style is very much inspired by the first Power Blade. Not so much the second, although there are some things from the second that are featured in this game, like you can slide, which I don't believe was in the first Power Blade. I'm trying to remember. I don't think it was.
I don't recall that, no.
Yeah, it was Mega Man 3.
Yeah, Mega Man 3. But yeah, Power Blade, very much a main thing that was used as main, like a primary inspiration. And I really think that this game answers the call of, what if a third Power Blade game was made? What if Taito made a third Power Blade game? And I really think it would come out very similar to this, probably a little bit more Japanese feeling, just because it's Taito. But like the whole aspect of the game is, once you get through the intro level, it then opens up to like a Mega Man style, or really a Power Blade style, like level select, where you have to go through each level. And all the levels, they're linear in the sense that you can only go one way to finish the level, but the levels are these like sprawling kind of mazes, and you get to a person, and that person, it's different in every level. They give you a key card that you can use to access the boss, basically. So then you access the boss, you beat the boss. You don't need any kind of, it's not like Mega Man where you need a power-up to beat a specific boss. It's not like that at all. Like,
I mean, even in Mega Man, there are people at what's called a pea shooter run.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You can level up your weapon with different like power-ups that you can get over time. There's one that makes you like invulnerable and invincible for like a short period of time. There's one that like extends the boomerang or the chakra so that it goes further out. There's one where it like makes the chakra like beefier, like fluffier. It looks like a giant Cheeto, like the puffy Cheetos, but they're it's all like neon. It's like neon Cheetos, really.
Nifty.
Neon puff Cheetos, yeah.
Now I want Cheetos.
Now I do want Cheetos. Thanks, me. Yeah, we'll talk more about like the plot and all that, but it very much like if you've played Power Blade and you loved Power Blade, you will love this game because it very much is a spiritual successor in every way, shape, and form. So the program answer did a great job like with the actual gameplay and everything. Yeah. And then of course when you add Matt's music into it, it like blows it out the water. Yeah. So it's a cool game. Yeah. You did good, Matt. Okay.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, let's get into our next track. Right. So this is my pick. It's Rooftops, Rooftop Prowler. Oh man, welcome back. That was Rooftop Prowler. Oh my god, my head, my neck. So much head, so much banging, so much head banging.
There you go.
I got me there.
You really did. Oh man, this one was heavy out the gate. You have a really good habit of setting the tone immediately, like with the ice track previously, coming right in with the twinkly synths to set the ice tone, and with this one just like heavy metal out the gate. From like pressing play, we were both immediately headbanging.
Yeah. Was groove metal an inspiration? I'm feeling like some Machine Head in there, like maybe like early like Burn My Eyes style, and kind of mixed in with some Fear Factory too, a little bit, like some industrial.
Yeah, maybe not on purpose, but you're right. I mean, I had the first 3 Machine Head albums, and I had Demanufacture. Like those are in my history somewhere. Double kick, like Demanufacture's double kick sound, like that stuck with me forever. And maybe I don't recall deliberately doing that, but I'm probably doing that now that you mention it.
It's internal. It's like in your guts,
Yeah.
Like especially that part that's like da 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 da.
Yeah.
Like that aspect definitely feels very like Fear Factory, but then the Machine Head, just like the groove of this track, like when the track kind of gets into its groove, you really can feel like you just like got that metal stink face on, and you just like your head banging with it to the groove. You've got great timing in this track. And then there's just so many, especially towards the end, there's so many subtle details that I want to go back and listen to this track where I'm just like, wait, no, rewind it. Like I want to like revisit that part, because there's just so much, you're hitting us with so much detail. How many layers did you have to set up for that? That must have been crazy.
Yeah, it's just the nature of writing chiptunes, at least in my case. A guy like Jake Kaufman, he has the music theory under his belt, so he kind of knows where he's going when he's writing something. So for him, like I don't feel like this exact phenomenon happens, but for me, I'm looping a track, like a pattern, like 4 bars or less, 1 bar. I'm looping it over and over and over. And if you loop something that long, like I don't know if you ever did this as a kid. Did you ever just leave a track on loop all night or something? Did you ever do that?
Yeah.
Because you liked the track so much and you wanted to prove to everyone how much you like it, so you listened to it for like an hour straight. Sometimes if you do that, you start hearing stuff in that song that you never heard before. Like you can hear, I swear I can start hearing the click track by accident. I can hear it in the background sometimes in some songs because I've heard it so much. But you wouldn't hear it on your first listen, right? And so the more you listen to it, so I'm listening to my own stuff, and I'm like having day trip hallucinations on my own music, and like adding layers that like I famously, when I was trying to write music for Venture Kid, I found out if I eat potato chips or something really crunchy while I'm writing the music or listening to the loops, by definition of crunching that chip down, it's muting notes. And when you mute a note that has been there in your head the whole time, suddenly your brain sends you off on another journey. Like if there's no note there, it gets filled with this or that. Or like it's always trying to fulfill itself. So you're probably experiencing what I was as the composer of it, where I'm like I'm going on this crazy hallucination on notes that I'm hearing ahead and ahead and ahead and ahead. And that's probably what you're hearing. It's funny that you've caught on to that, though.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy.
One of the many things that I found interesting in the song, but the one that stood out to me, I didn't notice it until like the last half, so I don't know if it just wasn't present or if I just didn't pick up on it, but it sounds like there is... The best way I can describe it is like a slashing sound being used as percussion. And it's really neat because, like I said, I didn't notice it for a while. And then once I picked up on it, I was like, oh, is that what I think it is? And I kind of tried to tune into it a little bit more. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a whoosh, whoosh, like a sound effect that you would hear for like a sword slash or something. And again, not out of place. Just an interesting thing to pick up on. And then, I mean, I could also be completely wrong. It could be like, oh no, that's actually a snare and you're just hearing it this way because of these other things that are happening around it. But
that's like a sousaphone, Justin.
I mean, I should know better. But
man, like, you guys have good ears. This is ridiculous. Nothing gets by you guys. That's exactly what it is, Justin.
Are you serious?
I was like, channel on the Nintendo is what was used to make a lot of sword slash sounds. So what I'm doing is I'm using that noise channel to write an additional psh to the snare drum. So it's like if the snare drum hits on the sample, it sounds like psh, but if you add the noise, it's like psh, and it has like an extra bit to it. It has extra meat. So that you picked up on it exactly, and that's why it does sound kind of like a sound effect, because that's what the Nintendo used for // sound effects was the noise channel.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Goody or Justin?
And like I heard it, and then I almost immediately talked myself out of it. But like, let me write this down. It'll be like a little funny thing they can make fun of me for.
All right.
Let's move on.
Let's get into our next track. What do you got for us?
All right. So next up for us, I'm going to play Boss Theme 04, Spirit of Detroit.
Ooh.
Hey there, that was Boss Theme 04, Spirit of Detroit, with an exclamation point. And obviously composed by our guest today, Matt Creamer. This is a non-stop, high-energy, high-octane, in-your-face,
love it,
jump out of the side of a vehicle while it's going full speed. Mm-hmm. I like this one specifically because it's the type of track that could very easily become kind of like, even though it's high energy, these kind of tracks can really easily become repetitive and boring by just kind of like not doing anything interesting. And that's not what's happening here. Like this is not repetitive. There's obviously, you know, like the beat is fairly repetitive in there. It's you've got some droning going on, but you have enough different ideas that it feels like more than what I'm used to in this kind of a track.
Yeah. I mean, you'll hear me say that there's just so many layers when we talk about Matt's music, and that's very much true. There's one thing that I got stuck on, though, and not in a bad way, but in the background with the drums, and I guess I was just, for whatever reason, was really paying attention to it. There's like a cymbal sound. It's like a crash cymbal, and it's very loud, and it's almost as if like the cymbals are like doubled or even tripled up on each other, because before the note can finish, it sounds like there's another one kind of blasting off. So it's like psh, 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 like it. I never get the sense like when you listen to a song that has cymbals in it, you know, via, you know, like an 8/16-bit track, etc., with chiptunes. when you do hear cymbals, they're not layered on top of one another. They're always like,
they're usually spread out.
They're that's kind of how they operate. But in this track, it's just like constant cymbal crashes in the background. What was going on with that? Or am I just like not listening? Are my ears broken?
No, overall it's a very noisy soundtrack for me, and noisiness it's a risk. It's one thing that I was always trying to contain. I was always trying to tame on this soundtrack, but I couldn't really tame it. Like, I came up with this concept and I had to see it through, but it was just an inherently noisy concept. And if I want to run my I found the cymbals just sounded flat if I didn't treat them like the rest of like produce them. I had to basically produce them, and it just made them inherently quite loud. So yeah, there's not a very staccato nature to these cymbals. They're more like crashes. Like, it's definitely like the guy I'm picturing like the drummer from Meshuggah. Have you ever seen any live videos of him playing drums? It's like cymbal, 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 and he's always going at the cymbal. And then sometimes they'll go like to the groove where it's like just the hi-hats going, but like when they're really going on the heavy parts of the song, it's like
yeah.
I'm picturing that with this, but yeah, it's tough with NES chiptunes because it's going to sound inherently quite noisy.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. There's a couple different boss themes too throughout this entire game, so I'm curious, Justin, why this one, not any of the others?
Well, so we'll listen to another one later on, actually.
Yep.
But this one, I picked this one earlier on just to kind of talk about what I mentioned earlier, where like it's very easy to have a boss theme, and there are so many games where this happens for me. Is like the boss is supposed to be, the big intense fight, and like I feel like when every boss has the same theme, you kind of tune out. Like the first time you get to a boss, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then over the course of the game, like you kind of just tune the track out.
Yeah.
But then, and I'm trying to remember what games I've played, because there's definitely been a handful where the boss theme is like either a short loop, so the track is either A, annoying because it is such a short loop and just repetitive, or B, it doesn't do anything interesting, so my brain tunes it out a lot quicker than say on the Mega Man stuff. But again, because the layers, because of like, I don't know if I'd call them movements, but there are definitely like distinct different portions of the song. Like there's something happening here, and then there's something else happening here, and then there's a third thing happening a few minutes down the line, and that keeps the whole thing fresh. So, my first instinct when this track played was like, oh, you've got like the boss intro track kind of built into the opening of this track, but that's not really it, because you're establishing the baseline of the track, you're establishing the intensity of the boss, and then you're building off of it. It's not like the intro. Like the it's not like the intro and then it goes away. Like it persists through the track, which is really cool. But that, and then the other thing, like there are some, like, there's a lot of note slides in this, particularly in the beginning, that I just thought were really interesting and fun, which is why I put this one up first. And
like,
I mean,
the bow, 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 like that type of stuff.
That there's a few other pieces where like it's more of a slide, like bleh, as opposed to just like the quick slides. There's more of a gap between the notes, I guess.
Yeah, there's a thematic reason for that too. Like, so this is the final boss theme of the game. And something the developer for Slayin, actually, he kind of coined this, or put this idea in my head way back in the day, where he's like, I don't want a theme song for the boss. I want a song for the fight itself. And so it's something, when you look at the boss fight, you look at what happens, what attacks does the boss do, what's the general tone? Does it seem dire? Is it funny? Is it whatever? So with final boss tracks, it's usually like all bets are off, and there's things falling from the sky. The Statue of Liberty, I think, comes to life, and you're fighting like arms flailing everywhere. It's a whole screen is a sprite of the boss, and so it has to sound a little bit like Armageddon. So with those note slides down, if I recall correctly, I think there's things falling, or at least I wanted it to sound like the things were falling, and so like it's like and like everything has to be on the way down. But the other big thing with this track too, it's definitely the one where I was trying to get like the most tricky with the time signatures, like on the whole soundtrack. And that's kind of like that's just like a go-to move if you're if you want to write like a boss theme and you want the boss to kind of seem mysterious, like what's happening, I don't know. It's like it was kind of surprise, like you just a dark mysterious thing. It's always a nice treat if you just throw in a bunch of weird odd meters.
Yeah.
So that the listener can't really like follow what's happening yet, and then you have to find a way back to the main beat. So that's when you're talking about sections in this track. There's basically like there's the odd meter sections, then there's the sections where you can tap your head to, and like it goes like one on, one off, one on, one off. So you're kind of always on edge, and then you get your footing, and that's kind of when you're attacking and you're on the attack, and then it's like here's the part where you can't quite tell because the boss is attacking. It's like mysterious, and that's kind of the goal for that anyway.
Got it. That actually makes a lot of sense now.
You mentioned that the song name is boss theme for Spirit of Detroit, and people are probably like, what do you mean Detroit? We'll get into that in a future break, I promise.
Right, yeah. How is the Spirit of Detroit? And there's also the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
All will be revealed.
And there's no RoboCop. Yeah.
That too.
Or the Detroit Tigers. I don't know. All right.
Anyway.
Let's get into our next track.
Yes.
My pick coming up next is Factory Flip the Switch by our guest, Matt Creamer. Hey, you are back, and that was Factory Flip the Switch by Matt Creamer off of Prison City's excellent soundtrack. Oh man, I gotta say, this one feels the most Power Bladey. It's got a lot of bounce to it. It feels the most like an 80s kind of track. I mean, it does have like the bound, you know, it still has like a guitar in it, but those sustained notes, the wah, wah, feels very much like riding off into the sunset 80s track to me. You know, I know that that's not this, like I know that's not the end of the game because this takes place in the factory level, but it has a very much like a you did it kind of vibe in a lot of ways. But yeah, as I've been saying this whole time, and just in general about Matt's music, you get this continuous movement forward where the track just keeps changing. It's one of the reasons why I really love Matt's music, is because it does keep changing, yet it still harkens back to that earlier stuff that you heard in the track. So you'll always get that loop that you're used to hearing in an NES track. You're getting such an elaborate song for the stage music, but it just keeps changing and morphing until it then gets that loop back to the original part. So
yeah,
it's really cool.
The track is very driving. I mean, pretty sure all of Matt's tracks are pretty driving, just because of like you said, like it really just keeps moving. It keeps plowing forward.
He's gonna be like, "Well, screw you, Justin. Now I'm gonna write a power ballad."
I mean, I'll love that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, the galloping bass stood out to me here, and like I know you love galloping bass, so no surprise there.
Sure.
But the thing that stood out the most to me were the really neat use of triplets, unless it was done with a time signature change. But either way, like what it comes down to, because it fits in line with the beat of the song, the triplets technically slow things down for a brief moment, but like triplets are always in time. They're just a syncopated musical device.
That's a good point, yeah.
And I feel like I don't hear triplets a lot, especially in video game music. So whenever I do hear them, I'm like, oh, that's a really good use of them. And I mean, technically any use of a triplet could be a good use of a triplet.
True.
But due to what I see as the lack of the use of these in video game music, it's not something that I hear a lot, so it really kind of perks my ears up when it happens.
Some of my best friends are triplets. Was he right? Were they triplets?
Actually, I have no idea what part of the song that refers to, but it probably speaks more to the fact I'm going entirely by ears, and I don't necessarily know what I'm doing all the time. But I do know I get into the same trouble with the drum beat in this track is sort of like a doopa dappa doopa dappa doo doo dappa doopa dappa doo, and there's that emphasis at the end. And if you're trying to count that out in fours, it spills over into the next bar all the time. That's why trackers are such a hard thing for me to write, because the first 4 rows of my pattern are from the last beat, and I don't know what the term is for it. I actually have no idea what the term is, but that's how I always hear the drums in my head, and I always accidentally write a pattern that has that, and it's like, well, here we go again. Now I gotta deal with this for an entire track. Because the crazy thing is, once you write a song like that, I have, as of yet in my life, never found a nice, clean way to go to a simple do-dat, do-dat drum beat after it. Like, buckle in, kids, because you're going to be like this for the rest of the song. Like, there's no way out.
I mean, once you...
So maybe that is what the triplets you're hearing, like, you're...
Yeah.
Once you start Iron Maiden, you can't go to AC/DC, you know? Like,
yeah.
That's not how it works.
It would be a hell of a transition, yeah, a hell of a transition. But hey, maybe you guys can help me out with this. Yeah. There's one transition in that song where I go da 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 da. I know that's from something, but I don't know what it's from. I have no idea. Like, how can I even say I referenced something when I have no idea where it's from?
What the?
It sounds like something.
Yeah, that sounds like a Mega Man piece.
What is that?
That does sound like Mega Man.
Like Mega Man. I just assumed it was Mega Man, but I can't for the life of me tell you what Mega Man game it is, or even what level, and usually I'm pretty good with that. So what the hell's going on here?
I want to say it's Mega Man 3.
I feel like it rolls into something that's like da 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 da. Like it kind of carries into that. Yeah. Mega Man music has a very like interesting quality because it's not quite dance, it's not quite metal, it's chiptune. It's straight up chiptune. Straight up, but like
just as a guy who's been doing chiptunes for so long, when you have 2 square wave channels and that's it.
Yeah.
The reason why I don't like to hang on a note, we were talking earlier on the Discord about how I sometimes have to hang on a note, and it's really hard for me to do that because when you're using these 2 square waves, you can't hit the exact same note in the same octave on both square waves at the same time. You can never do this because if you do, they double in sound and they create a buzzing sound that will immediately stand out in the track in a really bad way. Like almost like an alarm going off. It's not a pleasant or aesthetic sound. So you have to always be avoiding the same notes with both channels. You can never hit the same note. And if you absolutely have to, you have to detune one of them by a lot so that at least there's like a fuzziness to them. And so when you write your music with that in mind, you have to write it in a way where you're never hitting the same notes at the same time. So it's by definition going to change the way the song is written and structured. But when you go to it, like, and that's why I want to move back to Cubase, because you can hit the same notes with guitars or synths, everything. It sounds good if you hit the same note.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds amazing. If you hit the same note with those square waves on a Nintendo, it sounds terrible.
Let's get into your next pick. What do you got for us?
All right, so moving down the list here, we are moving on to DCP Headquarters, A Hero's Welcome.
All right, let's give it a listen.
You're listening to XVGM Radio, where the bits just keep coming.
All right, that was DCP Headquarters, A Hero's Welcome. Oh, man. And I got to say, like, if this song played when I walked in a door, I would feel like a hero.
You down with DCP?
Yeah, you know me.
That's it. I love this, but I will say this also sounds like Mega Man to me.
Yeah, no, I get that. There is some stuff that sounds like the Capcom sound font in there. Yeah. I also love Mega Man music, so no surprise that I would pick something that sounds like something I love.
He also did a trail right before the loop, too, which
That echo effect?
Very Natsume.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to say, like, I like the effect and it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
It's not a real echo. I mean, like, even... You know, when you're composing music, like there isn't an echo. You create effects for that, or you write it in such a way that it sounds like an echo. But it's just
like a delay and a fade.
Yeah. I like the way that it was done. Like you got it like right at the end there, and also in the middle, because I think there was 2 loops of the track there. Just a nice little flourish. I have to say. Combine that with, in the beginning part of the track, there's a little bit of what sounds like call and response, with the response having like a more full sound than the call. But like I like that dichotomy of like, here's this little line and now here's a response line that kind of like builds on it, which is generally how you do call and response. But the traditional call and response is very, very simple, and this kind of like adds, like we've talked about, Matt likes to do, this adds an extra layer, which is really nice.
I do also like the fact that when it does that fade, it rolls right back into the song, which in and of itself starts off with a bang, you know, boom, dun, 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 dun,
yeah.
Bam, bam. And so you don't lose any steam on that repeat of the loop. It just immediately rolls right into.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's not an echo that like slows the track down.
Yeah, because a lot of the times when you hear that, it signifies the end of the track, and then it goes into whatever the next thing that happens in the game, like, you know, go to a next stage or something like that. So it's really unique to see a quote-unquote finale fade and delay and have it roll right back into the beginning of an already, like, you know, bumping intro to a track. So was that intentional when you were creating that?
Oh, yeah. My whole game here is like, I'm a troubleshooter, And the problem I'm trying to troubleshoot is to transition one part I wrote into another part. Like no parts are ever supposed to go together from my perspective as the troubleshooter. And so it's like, all right, come on, your job is to get in here and make these two pieces fit. And so you get really good at hearing rhythmic hooks on how to make one part blend with another part. And so, yeah, you guys are talking about the ending where it's like and that that's the rhythmic hook. That's still part of the ending, but it makes you go right into the first note of the next one. So you need to leave the little breadcrumbs out for the listener. You can't just dangle them out there and be like, "Good luck, kid." Like you gotta help the kid find the downbeat. So you just need to find. It's all about transition. So yeah, that was definitely and depending on how you started the song, it's gonna change the way the transition is gonna sound back to the beginning. And in terms of NES music, maybe it's just something I do intuitively or inherently because I've been steeped in them for so long. But the ending loop from the end to the beginning is the most important loop imaginable. It has to be 100% seamless, or it's going to sound like skipping CD audio, like when they would come up with Mega Man Anniversary, and there's no looping in the end of the song. It just stops, and then it plays the song from the start again. Like, what the hell?
The worst.
Not the way it goes.
It's like it's like fake Red Book audio. Like when you play Final Fight CD on Sega CD, and like you get to the end of the track, but you're still playing the game, and then the track has to loop, and it's got this like 6 to 7 second delay where there's just no music and you're just fighting in silence. It's so weird.
Yeah, so you want to avoid that at all times. Like, that's the cardinal sin, especially if someone has paid you, the expert in NES music, to make NES music for your game. You damn well better make sure that NES music has a couple of the core staples. And one of those things is, like, it has to loop seamlessly. It has to. It must.
Right. So let's talk about the plot of Prison City. Unlike Power Blade, which takes place in the future, Prison City takes place in the far-off year of 1997. Oof. I love that. I love the throwback. It reminds me of...
Flight of the Conchords.
Flight of the Conchords.
The distant future.
Yeah.
The year 2000.
Yes, exactly. So Detroit is crime-ridden, as we know from RoboCop. I guess what happens is they have to evacuate everyone in 1995, and it turns into a giant super prison. So now in the quote-unquote present day of 1997, there's an evil group that has broken in and taken control of the prison. And so you have an ex-cop named Hal Bruiser, and he's called back from retirement to take down the techno-terrorists and their wardens. And the wardens, I guess, are the bosses. So, yeah, that's about it. So there's an intro stage, and then there's 8 levels, I believe.
That seems pretty standard.
Yeah. The levels have some elements that differentiate. Like, it's not just a side-scrolling, like, action game. There's also one level that takes place where you're, like, riding on a bike, like a motorcycle. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's got, like, a lot of nods to other games. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, like, listen, if you like action games from the 80s and early 90s, you know, this type of style, I think you're really going to like Prison City. I do got to ask, though, how did it start as far as, like, you getting the call for this game? Because a lot of the times when you talk to composers, they're just like, yeah, I'm doing this game. But, like, I always want to know, like, how did that conversation start?
Yeah, well, you mentioned Simon Quest, A Transylvanian Adventure. Mm-hmm. I found him on Twitter because of that, and I sent him messages, and that was my goal to network, was to message people on Twitter who would let you message them. Some people have blocked it, but anyone that had it open, I would send them a message, tell them who I was, introduce myself, and just say, if you're ever looking for audio, guys, I'm a guy, here's some of the stuff I've made, blah, blah, blah. It was like a really light cold call. It was all bespoke. I never copied and pasted. Mm-hmm. Everyone got like a bespoke thing. And I said, I really like your game. It stood out to me, and I want to just network with people that I think are making cool stuff. Mm-hmm. And so he was one of the guys I networked with that got back to me. And not everyone did. Almost all of them didn't. But he was one of the ones that did. And he's like, yeah, I think I've heard of your stuff before. And so we've been friends on Twitter since that. And he... It was years and years after the fact, but he said, yeah, I'm working on a game jam. He was the one hosting the game jam. I think it was a weekend-long game jam or something. He was making Prison City for it. And it started out as, like, the first level, the train level in Prison City. And he's like, I need some music for this game. Would you want to make some music for this? And at the time, so many times in my career, I've been like, well, I guess it's retirement for me. Like, it's a tumultuous career being a musician, and it doesn't always work out So he's making this game jam, and I was in the middle of like trying to learn how to do database work and do all, like I was trying to learn a new career basically. And he's like, do you have time to put some music together for this? And I didn't have the time, and I was in a bad way. Like I've got no money left in my account. I don't have time to even make this. So I had a bunch of leftover tracks from a game I'd worked on before. In the process of making that, I had bits and pieces that were like, oh, I'd never used this before. So I quickly, as like really quickly as I could, made like 20-second loopable tracks for him as fast as I could. And one of them was actually the exact song Combatants from this game is one of the ones that I sent him.
Oh, wow.
The normal boss track from this game. So that was one of the first ones I sent him, and a couple that weren't actually in the game at all. Like we didn't even end up using them. But because I basically took a chance and said, let's go for it. Let's do this game jam. I ended up getting this gig once Retroware picked him up and wanted him to make the full game. He was like, well, let's get this guy. That's the guy I already know. He's good at this. He's already made the tracks for the game jam. And that saved my bacon. That was like a huge like saving grace. It probably kept me afloat for like at least like till I could get the next gig. And yeah, so it's sometimes you just get a feeling about it. Like I gotta try this.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay, let's get into the next pick. It's called Power Plant Raw Power. Boy, that was Power Plant Raw Power. Raw Power. First off, I love this track, but this feels like Konami and Natsume had a baby. A little baby Ikumizutani baby, and then that baby had another mutated baby that has Norrin Radd's face on it.
Jeez.
And that baby made this song.
I mean, I guess you're not far off.
That's
a terrifying, terrifying thing to visualize, but okay.
Yeah. I don't know. That's how I feel about it. How do you feel about it, Justin?
I didn't care for this. No, I'm joking. So I got
too much raw power.
Too much power.
Yeah.
Power overload. No, I got really lost in the bass line for this one. Actually, it's another one of those cases of like it's a really cool bass line, and it reminded me of something else, and my brain just got lost in like, what does this remind me of? And in the 2 minutes that this track played, I could not figure out what it reminded me of. So I was just like, well, it was really cool,
like the
really cool bass line.
Yeah, Contra. I was getting some Contra vibes off that opening bass line and riff.
Yeah.
And then when it kind of rolls into the bam 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 bam, that is very much like a Natsume style.
Yeah, but very different, I feel, than a lot of the other stuff that we've heard.
I agree.
In this episode.
Not as loaded. It feels a little bit more stripped back. which is a good thing.
Well, I think it's also the shortest track we've played so far.
Yes.
Under 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's
which, I
true.
mean, not that any of these tracks are like exorbitantly long, but most of them have been between like 2 and 3 minutes, and this one was just under 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I got so caught up in that bass line, that bass groove, that's actually all I heard. Like, you're talking about the melody and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I kind of remember that.
Well, that checks out.
Most of what my brain is processing is just
That checks out though, because you're the bass guy and I'm the drum slash melody
guy.
Yeah, I'm the squeedly meadly guy, so that checks out. Yeah.
These are technical terms, obviously.
Oh, of course. Yes. Squeedly meadly and
bass.
Dat
creamer bass.
Dat creamer bass. Yes. Was there any difference in regards to composing this track versus some of the others? Since we were saying that some of the other tracks are a little bit more, I don't want to say wordy, but like I'm trying to think of a word that makes sense, like more complicated, I guess.
They're more bombastic.
Yeah. This one's a little bit more stripped back.
Less bombastic, more straightforward, which is a really hard thing for me because I feel like if I write something like that, I'm not giving the developer their money's worth. Like it's just this weird feeling I have where I'm like, you're not getting enough notes, you're not getting enough Norrin Radd. Like it's hard for me to know when I've presented them with enough to be a normal, complete track. Like usually. It's kind of like on X-Men, Iceman has this ice power that's out of control, and so Xavier builds this ice belt for him that contains his power. And with like, I don't have that ice belt usually, so it's like ice is everywhere, it's going nuts.
Yeah,
like it's hard for me to contain it and put the belt on and be like just a nice normal ice cube. That's all we need to make. So it's sometimes I'm out of control. Like Cyclops without his visor.
I was just gonna go there.
I actually really appreciate that you went with Iceman over Cyclops, because I feel like everybody knows about the Cyclops thing, but the Iceman thing,
that's a deep cut.
I don't know how deep a cut it really is, but I feel like a lot of the popular media, like the X-Men movies from the early 2000s, I don't remember them touching on that at all.
I mean, I've been reading X-Men since the 90s, off and on, and I had no idea that Iceman had a belt that control. I didn't know that.
Maybe they haven't done anything with that in the more modern iterations.
They haven't done much
I think
with Iceman.
The reason why I know it is probably from those Marvel cards, like the trading cards they used to have. I think that was on the back of Iceman's card. Like his powers are so insane that Xavier had to give him a belt to contain him.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think Iceman is an Omega level mutant, or he's an Alpha level mutant.
So. I think he's Omega. Yeah.
It's he doesn't get enough love. Is all I can say. Like everybody likes Wolverine and Rogue and Gambit. I mean, I am guilty of a lot of that stuff. But like Iceman is really cool, and people sleep on him.
We need to bring back Carlos for this conversation from the Heroes 3 podcast, because we had a whole episode on X-Men in episode 93. Yeah. Anyways, I really dig this track, and it does very much feel like a Konami Natsume baby.
If I had to say it sounded like, or anything I was going for, was probably like a Jackal track. It's supposed to kind of be like Jackal.
Oh, yes. Okay. Jackal. Yeah, I do hear Jackal a lot in this. Yeah, for sure. That's a good soundtrack. Like on the NES.
Yeah. I know I've heard some of it, but I'm not familiar enough with it to make the comparison.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. Yeah. All right. Let's get into our next pick.
All right. We only got a few more left to go. We're rounding the bend here. Track number 8 of this podcast, episode 123, is going to be Stadium Game Day. Hey, welcome back to this Prison City with Matt Creamer episode. That track you just heard was Stadium Game Day, and oh man.
I gotta talk about the drums while it's in my head.
Go ahead, because that was the first thing on my list as well.
Okay, I really like how much change up there is in terms of like the time signatures on this. Like the beginning, you hear like a and then it kind of kicks into the and then it morphs into something else, and it just keeps changing like as the track goes on. Like that was all I heard for whatever reason. Like the melody was great in this, I loved it, but like for whatever reason I was really hyper focused on these drums in this track. Were you too?
Yeah, well, so more in the beginning than anything else.
Okay.
The very first thing that I wrote down is really heavy on the drums in the beginning. For me, they kind of faded to the background a bit as, you know, the melody and some of the other stuff came up. And then like somewhere around the 1 minute mark, there was just this really awesome like solo, and the first thing that my brain heard was like, oh, this is a really cool guitar solo, like using the upper registers, the thinner strings in the guitar. And then another part of my brain went, no, this is a saxophone solo, and I went, oh, that's so cool. And I mean, I'm sure I assume that it was designed as a guitar solo, but as soon as like my brain started making me believe that it was a saxophone solo, it totally changed the track for me, and I was like, this is really cool. Like it was already cool, but now hearing this as a saxophone, just totally different. And like it didn't change it to like a jazz track or anything. It was still real good rock track, but like now I kind of want to hear a Red Book audio version of this track with a saxophone.
A terrible Red Book audio version of this track.
Exactly. Let's do it. Make that happen.
Are you kind of working with the limitations that you're setting up based on the tracker, or like how difficult is it to kind of match what you did on a tracker with endless possibilities of, you know, trying to layer underneath it, you know?
Yeah, you could end up getting yourself in trouble if you go off the path. So the song was written as an NES chiptune first. I wish I had the actual the untreated versions I could have sent you guys. I don't even know where they were. I think I did this project on my like a whole computer ago.
I was gonna say that'd be cool to hear, like to hear it sound more like a Venture Kid kind of sound.
Yeah, because they're complete. They're complete NES tracks. They
Sure.
would have stood side by side with Venture Kid and Slayin' and anything else I've ever made.
Yeah.
But with these ones, I had to port over the MIDI information, right? So I ported over the MIDI information so I can slot that into whatever drum sounds I want from Cubase.
Yeah.
And I also port over the audio of the existing like NES drum sounds. So they're the foundation. They're the sound you hear the most of. And all I was wanting to do was just to get it to sound more full, without ruining the fact that the Nintendo is the main course.
Yes.
Right? So I would put real drums in the background, and I can't tell you, I don't remember exactly how I would process it or produce it, but I wanted it to just be a bigger drum sound, and the Nintendo was squashing that sound so that all it is sort of like the bottom layer of frequencies that you're getting, but you get the majority of it comes from, there's a VST I was using extensively for this project called Waves Factory. Oh shoot, I can't even remember. It's by the company called Waves Factory, but what it does is it sidechain compresses frequencies. So what a sidechain is if I'm talking into my mic right now, or if I'm doing my show and I have music playing in the background, when you talk in your mic, it will make the audio duck down. So I've sidechained my voice to tell that other channel, go down whenever you hear my voice. And so what I'm doing with this Waves Factory plugin is I'm saying frequencies that my voice is using go down in the channel I've sidechained it to. So my Nintendo drums say, all right, take that real drum sound and lower the frequencies of the real drums according to whatever my Nintendo drums currently sound like. So it's almost like they remove those frequencies entirely, and everything left is what a real drum would have sounded like. So you still hear the Nintendo drums the most,
right? But
there's like spillover. The filler, the extra is all the other drum sounds. Mostly, I didn't hard cut it out, but so yeah, I didn't add anything, but I was basically just trying to fill it out in like the audio spectrum.
No, you can tell that the drums specifically, the rest of the instruments not so much. Generally, you know, as I said earlier in the show, there's a bit of a brightness to the tone that's used here as compared to Venture Kid, which sounds a little bit more like minor tone, a little bit darker, I'd say, in various different aspects, and more Mega Man, really. Whereas this, just has a different sound. It takes on a different life in a way. It definitely sounds more full and more rich, almost as if it was using a VRC chip in a way, like a Konami VRC chip. So it's cool to hear this and to compare it with your earlier works, because I'm sitting here going like, wow, like this could be like the next step for his chiptune sound.
Yeah.
But leave it to me to only make chiptunes more difficult and more complicated than they already were for me.
Right. It's like you're like, all right, I want to make this simpler. I need to do double the work.
I feel like there's a chip on your shoulder, no pun intended. When you're a chiptune artist, you don't get into this unless you have some kind of chip on your shoulder. Like no one's like, oh, what's the funnest type of music to write? Chiptunes. No, it's a form of torture. It's not a normal thing. It's it's self-punishment somehow, and I feel like that's why a lot of the musicians I don't listen to a lot of other chiptune artists, because they're phenoms. They're absolute monsters, and it just makes me feel like there's too many there's final bosses everywhere in the chiptune field, because you can't just stumble into this and make it sound great off the to make it sound good. Like the best of the best. And I'm not saying my stuff, the best I've heard, you need to have this chip on your shoulder. And so, yeah, I've got this chip, and I can't beat a guy like Jake Kaufman with notes. I don't know music theory like Schnaboobala. I can't do what those guys are doing.
Right.
Despite me trying my entire career to chase those guys. So it's like, what else can I do? Well, I am definitely a problem solver, and I'm a problem solver, a very creative one. If you put any problem in front of me, you're going to get a Norrin Radd solution. It's like, that's how I solve problems, in the Norrin Radd way. So the way that I found out that I could do this was like, I'm going to try and do something that I've personally never done before. And in a lot of ways, that's what I did with Anomaly, which was the chiptune death metal album that I wrote. I wanted to do something that I had never done before and that I'd never heard before. And sometimes when you want something to exist, you got to reach into the abyss all by yourself, and you got to yank it out and drag it into existence. That's kind of what.
Yeah, Jake's stuff though is like, I mean, his chiptunes are great, but I gotta say, I think listening to his non-chiptune stuff, I feel like the musicianship of Kaufman kind of comes out a little bit more. When you hear like his Half Genie Hero, the Shantae Half Genie Hero soundtrack, you get all these different like genres of music that are coming forward. The Mighty Switch Force soundtrack. Whereas like when you're listening to Matt's stuff, especially like, I mean, yes, the chiptune stuff is great, but even like the non-strictly chiptune stuff, like when we did Slayin' 2, that wasn't just strictly chiptune, but you still can tell that it's Matt writing Matt music. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not like Jake is a genre writer. He can write genre-based music. Oh, I want jazz. Oh, I want, traditional Jewish music. Like he's all over the place. Give me a disco song, give me a funk song. I feel like Matt is more in tune with his own sound, and so this is just my perspective on your music, but it feels more like you're like, I'm just gonna write a rockin' track. Like be it chiptune or not, doesn't matter. It's still gonna be high energy. It's still gonna be rockin'. With that said, he's still able to write great music based on whatever the project is, so to speak. Whereas I feel like Jake is a little different in the sense that he's just gonna write whatever, and it doesn't matter if it fits or not. It just so happens to fit. Like Shantae, for example, that's where I think the difference is between you and him. So I don't necessarily think it's fair to compare you two, because you're writing just so different. The projects you're working on are just so different, and your styles are so different. So it's like, it's like Mozart and Bach. You know what I mean? Like it's VGM Mozart versus VGM Bach. You know what I mean? Like it's just two different sides of a coin, so to speak.
Yeah.
You can pick whichever one you want to be.
That's super accurate. You basically nailed it. Yeah, Vert, his Jake Kaufman's style. He's like such a good musician that whatever he writes is the developer would be out of their mind to reject it. Like this sounds phenomenal. Like we got to put this in. Whereas I know I've gotten tracks rejected before where, and I think I've even told this anecdote on the show before. They told me we want a track to sound strange and dangerous. So I wrote them a track that I thought sounded strange and dangerous. And their feedback was, I guess it was just a little too strange and dangerous. It's like, okay, so it's like I write very strange. And it's hard for me to like touch onto something that regular people can be like, oh, I like the way that sounds. But I feel like I'm kind of like a musician's musician, where it's like people that like to analyze stuff will probably get more out of my music than a normal person off the street to be like, I don't know what he's going for.
Right,
here.
right.
Weird stuff.
Yeah.
And that's my curse. That's my chip. That's the chip on my shoulder.
Matt sent them the track of Strange and Dangerous, and they were like, "Why'd you send us the Full House theme?" Like,
come on, man, let's get nuts. Are we nuts or not?
I just think it's funny. It's like, hey, here's what we want you to write, and then you do that, and they're like, you completed the assignment, but they judged it to be more of what they wanted than they wanted.
he got an A++. Yeah.
Mike, you probably know this. I don't know about you, Justin. I don't know what kind of music you're into, but I know, Mike, you're into some dark music,
yes,
like metal music. There's something that happens when you get into metal where it's like you can go way further dark than most people probably expect. Like,
yes.
Oh my God. Like, yeah, if someone were to say, Mike, can you recommend me a really dark and scary track? You'd send them something that give them nightmares. I'd be like, I thought I was thinking like AC/DC dark or something like that.
Right.
Nightmares for the rest of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, here's some My Dying Bride. And you're like, no, I'm scared. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
so when people want me to write something dark or like a final boss song, I always have to pull back. I can't unleash the full power of the darkness that I have. I can't do it.
We need to find a project.
I wanted to
that
write
Matt can do
Anomalies.
that.
Like, I'm gonna write the darkest chiptunes ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike was saying we need to find a project. I was literally just about to say we need to create a game based around your, like, you just get to do whatever you want, and then we're gonna put it in the game.
Right.
And then that's just how it is.
That'd be amazing.
But it's funny. Like, Mike's dark music is all like in the metal field, and my dark music is all in like the gothic industrial field. So like if you were to say, like something that's like dark and metal, Mike would probably have better suggestions, but I would go more typo negative, like sludge metal, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Goth metal, doom metal, or if you weren't looking for something heavy dark and you were just looking for something dark, it would be more in the gothic field. But yeah.
Sure.
Mike has far more experience in the metal fields than I do. I put a toe in every so often. I like metal, but Mike's discography or collected discography is just like, I've never heard of half of these bands.
Yeah. and likewise, I haven't heard of a lot of the stuff that you have too, with
right.
the synthwave stuff and the dark wave stuff. So, all right, let's get into the next pick. This is my final pick.
Yes, it is.
It's Outer DCP. You down with DCP? You know,
we've
me.
already done this joke.
I know, but it's still fun to say. Storming the Gates is the subtitle on this one. man, that was Outer DCP Storming the Gates by Matt Creamer, who's our guest.
Indeed.
I love this track. It's, oh my goodness. I love, first off, galloping bass. I'm in.
Yep.
Sold. The melody, though, dun, 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 dun. It's so fun and dancey and melodic, and really gives me some heavy Mega Man vibes for sure. I could rock out to this all the day, all of the day,
All the day.
all
day long.
all
Yep.
day long.
Yeah, no, I get a lot of that. It feels very much like a building track to me, and I don't mean building like you're in a building. Like the track is continually building, and the main thing that stands out to me on this track is the vibe I get from it, which is very hopeful. Not that nothing that we've listened to so far has been hopeful, but there's been some darkness, there's been some brightness, but like this feels. So I don't know again where this takes place in the game, but in my mind, this is like maybe leading up to the last boss or something. Like it's definitely not that you did it, but it's like we are rounding the bend, and like hope is there. Like we just got to do this one last job, and then we're out.
Okay. I could see that. I will also note that there's some interesting things with the notes that are being done right when that like shortly after when that main melody kicks off. It's almost as if the notes are going down like a half step. You know, where like you got like it's like a different octave or something, where it's like dun dun dun, and then it goes like doo doo doo, like it drops down a half step. Was that what was the idea in doing that, Matt?
No, you're absolutely right. It's very rare that you'll hear me do a key change, like a straight up key change.
Yeah.
And that one section sort of just before the minute mark, like maybe 45 seconds or so, that's where I was just doing straight up key changes, and I don't remember if I'm doing like this thing called chromatic mediance, or I can't remember what it is, but I don't hear it natively. I don't hear it naturally in my head. It's something I really have to calculate and plan for. And it just so happened by the way that I was writing this track, it sort of set itself up to do one of those things. So for me, a key change is basically a tool in the toolkit. And this, you're right, these are the DCP levels are all the last stages before the final boss. So they're all kind of leading up to the final boss. And so this is also chronologically how I wrote the soundtrack. Like it was basically from beginning of the game to the end of the game is kind of how it just worked out for us, because that was what they were on the list. So that's how I was doing them. And so by the end, I'm kind of out of ideas. Like every song I made for the soundtrack kind of had one idea that was unique to it, and I would use that idea kind of like a texture or a flavor. It's like I'm making this dish for dinner. And so with this one, if I'm out of dish, I'm like, I'm fresh out of salt, I'm fresh out of everything. Like, what do I do? So it was like back in my head, I'm like, hey, Ratty boy, try one of those key changes that you're notoriously like not familiar with. So it's basically take everything you wrote, put it down like 3 notes, put it down like 2 notes, and just see if it jury rigs like an idea loose in your head, and it did. So there's actually 2 key changes there that I can hear that would not be in my normal wheelhouse, and that's all in that one section, and that's probably what you were hearing.
Yeah, that checks out. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's really cool. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. Just that's not part of the song that I was paying the most attention to. But like when you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, that shift does happen. And I mean, before my brain had a chance to process, like, yeah, you idiot, it's called the key chain or key change. And as I was thinking that, like you brought up the key change, I was like, oh yeah, I know, that's exactly what's going on there. Which I'd never picked up on the fact that like you don't do those much. But like, yeah, no, I don't. I can't remember many other tracks where you do something so distinctly.
It's used a lot in heavy metal, actually, in terms of the key change. Yeah,
definitely. And key changes can be really corny. Like if you think about that song "Kiri" from Mr. Mister. It's like they do this key change. It's like they build up. It's this big build up, and bam, you get like the corniest key change ever. Those are awful. Like I don't like key changes usually, so I usually I stay away from them. But chromatic medians, I don't know if that's technically what I did here, but those are my favorite types of key change. So if you think about what a chromatic median is, it's about like the Goonies soundtrack when they're like, it's our time down here, and it's like it's taking this one tone or mood and like just and they're going from one key to another, and there's a rule why it works, and I know it when I hear it, but it's really hard for me to do it on purpose. But yeah, it's such a great technique, and that's what separates me from a composer, say like a Jake Kaufman or someone that knows the music theory, because they'll just get on the keyboard and be like, key change, and they know exactly why everything works.
Right.
But for me, if I do a key change, I love the way it sounds, and usually it's because I hit a wrong note. I'm playing on the keyboard and I hit the wrong note, but it's a bridge to another key. I'm like, "Whoa!" And it sends me off in this path. And the crappy thing is, as a problem solver, I don't have a lot of tools to get back. So once I've changed key, how do I get back to the original key I was in? It's so complicated, and if you don't know, I can't hear my way back. It's like being in the dark. Like I can't hear my way back. I'm echolocating. Where the hell is it?
It's like stepping on a Lego.
Yeah. Exactly.
Lego
in the dark.
Lego in the dark.
Yeah. I can understand that. Like as a self-taught musician, like it is hard to do those things. Thinking about like how all that stuff works in music theory, I mean, it's not complicated per se, but there are definitely, like you were saying, there are definitely rules to it, and like, you know, when to do it, how to do it, and when it's appropriate. I tend to avoid key changes if I'm putting anything together as well for that same reason, because like, again, knowing the theory helps a little bit, but it really not as much as you might think. Yeah. It's like
not until you're an expert, right?
Yeah, well, right. And then at that point, you know, like you said with Jake Kaufman, you're just, you know, changing the key every 2 bars.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's no matter where you are in the field, it's not an easy thing, and it's not always an easy thing to pull off too. Like you can throw a key change in and have it be appropriate and still have it sound like garbage.
Yeah, true.
And that's not what happened here. Like those are some slick key changes.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into our last track. Technically, this is Justin's pick. What do you got?
Yeah, so I'm going to bring us back to that boss theme. So this is boss theme 1, Combatants.
All right.
All right, welcome back, XVGM Radio listeners. That was the last technical track of our episode 123, Prison City with Matt Creamer. There will be an outro track. We'll talk about that later. This was Boss Theme 01, Combatants.
Oh man, this was a straight up thrash track.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, straight up, just really chuggy, fast, chunky.
Driving.
Very much so. I dig it. And I love the splash sound effect. The
sweep?
Yeah, that sweep sound effect.
I had that in here too. Like the sweep sound effect is really well utilized and very appropriate. Like I was imagining like what this would sound like without that, and it would be less of a track without that. Like it's very well timed. I like that style of, I don't know if it's a noise sweep or what exactly you would call it. But
yeah, is that like a PCM sample, or are you using like the triangle wave, the triangle sound to make
Are you guys talking about the sound that goes?
Yeah, the swoop.
I don't know the techniques behind it, but the NES can do basically 16 different flavors of a noise. So a noise is just, and there's like a lower one, like,
Yeah.
And so if you play them in sequence, you can kind of go from a low one to a high one. And that kind of acts as a filter sweep. So what I will do, it's a great move for a transition. All you young chip tuners out there, if you're like, man, my transitions sound like crap. One thing that you can try and do is just sweep the noise all the way up. It just leads the listener more than just the notes by themselves. And sometimes if you have a really chaotic track, that's a go-to move to try and glue two pieces together that ordinarily wouldn't sound too good.
So if I remember correctly, there are 4 boss tracks in this. So there's this one, and I forget what 2 and 3 are called, and then we played 4. 2 and 3, I feel like I remember them being kind of a variation on a theme. I like this one for being... This is the first boss track. So like the first boss that you come across, I'm assuming, is this track. And this feels like a really good introduction to Matt's boss track.
I think this plays in the intro.
Is it in the intro?
Like in the intro stage at the end.
Oh,
I think
when you
there's
fight the boss?
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, there's a boss at the end of the first stage.
Yeah. So
This is the generic boss theme.
Generic. Okay, yes.
Yeah,
This is the boss theme for most bosses.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Again, it's still like the perfect intro for what you are going to do with boss themes, especially if it runs throughout most of them. The other 3, we know that the 4th one is the final boss. I'm unsure what 2 and 3 are. They have similar names.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Pain number 1 and pain number 2, and it was for the second to last boss of the game has a transition. That, he starts out as a normal man in the first one, and so there's a more normal sounding song that's more just basic and melodic sounding, and then he transforms into a hideous monster. And so I wrote the exact song again so they can switch at any time, so fade in and out between each other. But the second one is like all diminished sounding, like much more grotesque sounding. But they're quite a bit different in terms of like tone. Like the tone of them is a lot different. The second one is a lot more dire and chaotic sounding, whereas the first one just sounds kind of like an Iron Maiden track or something.
Yeah. Okay. So they do sound different in the sense that it's not the same melody, but sped up.
One other thing about this track that stands out to me from a lot of the other tracks, in your bass line, you hit a bass note that is lower than anything else I've heard in the soundtrack. It stands out to me because, again, it is a bit buzzy, but it's also just like, it's a very low note, and it doesn't sound bad or anything. It stands out, again, like I said, because I don't think I've heard it anywhere else in the soundtrack, or at least the soundtrack that we've listened to tonight.
Not a brown note.
No, definitely not a brown note. My pants are clean.
Speak for yourself, Mike.
We gotta end this thing quick. I'm not gonna make
it. We're almost there.
You're right. I didn't even notice that. That's really observant. It's just a go-to move. Also, you don't want your boss track to sound like he's got his testicles in a vice, right? You want him to sound like he's big dog on campus, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
It just had the lower notes. It's the same rule applies. I like the sound of low register strings, low register choir sounds. Like I like the way these really powerful low register instruments sound, but the problem is the NES can't go that low without it losing the power. And so what I did for this whole soundtrack, but it really shines in this track, is I'm layering under every track. The triangle wave has a sub bass synth underneath it. And it's like a sub-bass saw wave, so it's kind of buzzy on its own. But like I said, I'm using that Waves Factory plugin to basically, it removes all the frequencies that the triangle is hitting, and it just leaves some extra ones. So it presumably leaves the low ones as well that the triangle isn't able to hit very well. And so it worked out well in this track. And any of the times I did the galloping or the chugging parts, I felt like it was really strong in the soundtrack to a point where I will easily go back and find out what I did and reuse that in other projects because I really like the way it sounds. But yeah, you're right. This one had the lowest notes.
Okay, then.
Yeah, and the lower notes add a kind of a level of threat to the music that would not be present otherwise. That's what I was struggling to articulate, was like there's something about this track that made it feel like a really good boss track, and it is that super low bass that hits just right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, what's going on? I'm scared.
All right, now is the time of our episode where we pick our favorite tracks. It's going to be a doozy. Justin?
Oh, man, all of them. No, let me see here. I think it's going to be between Preserve Infiltrator and that Factory Flip the Switch.
Ooh.
Those are both really good, and I don't know that I can pick between them.
I got to go with Outer DCP, Storming the Gates. That was just awesome. But my secondary one would be Rooftop Prowler. So, what about you, Matt?
That's tough. I haven't listened to the soundtrack in this much depth in a really long time. It changes every day. So today... we might have to say Preserve Infiltrator is my favorite track, just because I still know how much of a miracle that one was to complete itself. I don't know what happened. I blanked out.
Yeah.
Fair.
Well, Matt, again, thanks so much for being on the show. As always, we love having you on. We'll have you on again soon. Let's not wait 3 years to have you on again. Let's do it sooner than later. What do you got going on? I know you got something coming up, right?
Yeah. Well, I've already written the entire soundtrack for basically what I consider is the spiritual successor to this game, even though the developers are not related at all. It's called Odo and the Ancient Worlds, and it's another NES-style game. But in the same vein, I got a big chip on my shoulder, and I said, I'm not making regular chiptunes anymore. If this one were basically like a Konami Natsume style or Taito style action game, the Odo and the Ancient World is me taking it and trying to make a Castlevania song out of it, or a Castlevania 3. So it was, without a doubt, the hardest soundtrack I've ever made because I was not able to rely on my bread and butter, which is like metal sounding stuff.
Sure.
It's all Castlevania stuff, which in my opinion is... It's like Capcom, where it's like, I need to know more about music theory to make it work. So there was just a lot more neurons firing on that soundtrack and a lot more layering of sounds. So with that soundtrack, it's going to be funny because you send the developer things until they're like, hey, that sounds good. And I did this like saxophone solo with one of the expansion chips. I don't remember which one, but I was able to like articulate a realistic sounding saxophone.
Oh, that's cool.
And they're like, we want that for every song. So it's basically Castlevania with a saxophone and like a slight metal bent to it.
I'm in.
I was just going to say, like, that sounds like Mike Sally.
I'm in. I like saxophone and Castlevania, so you got me, hook, line, and sinker.
That's awesome.
When does that come out, or do we have a release date?
No release date for it yet. I think the developers do it as a side project, but it's mostly finished at this point, and I think they've done a lot of press for it, but they've had some setbacks, so they had to kind of rebuild their press for it. But yeah, the pixel artist for it's the same pixel artist from Shovel Knight, I believe. So they've got some.
Oh wow!
They got some might behind it.
Awesome.
It's already done, but there's one more soundtrack or one more song that they want for the game, and I'm planning to make some YouTube content about how I'm going to make it. I'm going to title it "The Last Chiptune I Ever Write." So we'll see how that sticks. But
so you say.
Yeah,
we shall
check
see.
Out my YouTube channel for more about that. I'll have a lot more information about it.
Awesome. We will link all of that in the description below, so that way y'all can go find out what Mr. Creamer is up to in the near future. Thanks again for being on the show, as always.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show, and stop having so many big guests, and I'll be happy to come back anytime you guys have an opening. I appreciate nerding out with you guys. You're very knowledgeable. It's very impressive to me how you guys seem to always get this stuff, even if it's like really under the covers. You guys are able to sniff it out. It's impressive stuff. You guys do good work. Keep it up.
Thanks, man.
You write good music. You keep it up too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Cam Worma, Rage Cage, Kung Fu Carlito of the Heroes 3 podcast, Scott McElhone, Claire Myers, Brad Austin, Chris Murray, Llama Adam, Red Hua, Nick Davis, and Ryan McPherson.
If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/XVGM Radio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you and access to our monthly live shows.
You can visit our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show.
If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com.
If you like what you've heard, please consider giving us a review on iTunes.
You can join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at www.facebook.com/groups/XVGM Radio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks or just talking about the podcast itself.
You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle on both those sites is at XVGM Radio.
If you don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique, check us out on our Discord group chat. Links in the show notes. All right, so Justin, in a month we're going to be coming back with a new episode, but before that, let's just talk briefly about what we covered this month in June.
Yeah. So earlier in the month, we had a live show and an After Dark. On the 13th, which was the second Friday of the month, I believe, we did a Patreon episode all about sci-fi humor, sci-fi comedy, video games. A handful of good, solid games to choose from, and I mean a plethora of mid to not great games to choose from, but I'm sure we will have picked some interesting things. Go back and listen to it on the Patreon. If you are not already a patron, you can become a patron and get all of the Patreon live show episodes for as little as $1 a month.
$1.
So
Yep.
check that out. And then XVGM After Dark was 5 days later on the 18th of June, and we listened to my pick. This time it was Rusty, a PC-98 game, and we had a special guest, Ed Wilson,
From
came
VG
and
Embassy.
sat down with us to give it a listen. When we mentioned it, he said that it was a good soundtrack, and we said, well, you're right up the road. Do you want to come and hang out and listen with us? So
That's right.
we did that, and that was a good time. And then coming up in July, no Patreon episode. Next live show will be in August. But our July XVGM After Dark will be Mike's pick, and that's YY World 1 and 2.
Yes, the Famicom exclusive games that were basically Konami's little mascot action game. So super fun, great soundtracks.
Yeah, we don't have a date on that just yet. Nope. So if you're in the Discord, keep an eye on the Discord. We'll have an event created for that. Otherwise, if you're not in the Discord, just keep an eye on the socials, and we will have a Tuesday at some point in July for that.
So Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky.
Maybe Instagram if I remember.
Yeah. But coming up in 1 month for episode 124, we will be returning with another single game spotlight. We're going from Prison City, and we did a lot of talking on Mega Man this episode, and we're actually going to be doing a Mega Man game.
Yeah. Mega Man Battle and Chase Spotlight. We're going to take a look at Mega Man Battle and Chase.
Yeah, it's a kart racer that never originally came out in North America until the Mega Man X collection, I believe it was, where it was released as a bonus game. So yeah, get ready for that. So much awesome music in that game, so you guys are going to be spoiled rotten. Yeah. But anyways, this is Mike.
And Justin.
Signing off for XVGM Radio.
And it don't look pretty. Techno terrorists running the streets, bad mutants in the sewers right under your feet. There's nowhere to run. Sound the alarm. Every boulevard is a prison yard. The wardens grabbing power any way that they can, but the chief's got a plan. It's just one man, Hal Bruiser, best of the best. A bad mamma jamma who can fix this mess. Trains spit toxic clouds in the night, but Hal is here with it all in his sights. Muties and criminals better run. Hal's on the attack. He's number one. When the going gets tough, the tough get gritty. It's time to roll up to Prison City. Prison City. In the Prison City. Prison City. Better watch your back, Jack. Prison City. I'm on my way to the Prison City. Prison City. Lock your doors. Big Hal's coming and he's got support. Only one team can stop the barrage. Donna's got that top-notch espionage. Iroquois flies and Sergeant Lisa's got a few critters that would like to meet ya. Radd is playing that dodgeball, and Zag thinks he's better than all of y'all. Hubert's a whiz, and that's the truth. And Trish brings mechs that are really cool. Dolphin, super aquatic spy, robots the bot, and that's no lie. And that's the squad that will prevail. They came to chew gum and kick some tails, but they all out of gum, and that's a pity. It's time to roll up to the Prison City. They're moving under. I am beginning to wonder what's in the sewer that we don't know. Who is running the show? Chief seems suspect. I think the chief is a suspect. Why is the chief in that spirit mech? Detroit is under control.
Those were some slick key. God, I can't speak tonight. Those are some slick.
Don't get yourself canceled now. It's very impressive to me how you guys seem to always get this stuff, even if it's like really under the covers. You guys are able to sniff it out. It's impressive stuff. You guys do good work. Keep it up.
Thanks,
Yeah.
man.
You write good music. You keep it up too.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll continue to be under the covers.
Under my covers. What are you guys doing here?
Surprise. Alrighty.
All right.